Chapter 3 of A Copper Harvest by a Self-Made Man. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 3 The Face at the Window. "And you actually own the mine you've been speaking of?" said Jack Howard, regarding Gideon Prawl with a fresh interest. Had the boy at that moment looked toward the window of the surgery, which had been raised a couple of inches a few moments before by Charlie Fox, he might have noticed that there was an uninvited listener outside. This eavesdropper was Otis Clymer, late dispensing clerk for Dr. Fox, who had been discharged for his irregular habits and pilfering propensities. The man had made himself unpopular in Sackville, and but for the softness of the doctor's heart would have long since been sent away. He had an evil heart, and instead of leaving town, where he could not hope to get suitable employment, he had hung about the lowest drinking resorts in the place and meditated upon revenge. At this moment he was somewhat under the influence of liquor, and had made his way to the rear of the drug-store for the purpose of setting it on fire if he could find the chance to put his dastardly project into effect. He was somewhat surprised to find that the little surgery was occupied, and he hung about and listened, hoping the coast would soon be clear. What he heard through the opening at the bottom of the window, however, completely changed his purpose. "Yes, sirree, Bob. I own the ground that there mine is located on," said Prawl with his mouth full of food in answer to Jack Howard's question. "At least I've a 60-day option on it, which amounts to the same thing." "Then you didn't have the money to buy it out and out?" asked Jack. "No, I didn't. Didn't I tell you I've been in hard luck? I had just $100 in my clothes when they discovered that there ground was worth the buying, so I gave it up on account to that feller that owned the diggings. He wanted to sell so bad that he chucked in his shanty with it. Not that it's worth a sight more than so much kindling would." "How much ground did you buy?" "I should think he had about 4 acres staked out." "And what did the whole thing cost you, Mr. Prawl?" asked Jack, full of curiosity. "Well, it cost me $100 down, with $200 to come when I get back with the dust." "Pretty cheap for a real copper mine," spoke up Charlie. "You don't suppose he'd have sold it for that if he'd known as much about it as I did, not by a jugful." "Was he a prospector, too?" inquired Jack. "Jim Sanders wasn't much of anything that I know. An old pard of his owned the ground and turned it over to Jim when he died. Sanders thought more of his booze than anything else. That's why he wanted to realize. He had no use for the ground, and as it hadn't cost him anything, it was like finding money to sell it for anything at all." "And you're going to Chicago to raise money to work the mine? Is that your plan?" "That's the idea exactly. And I shan't forget you two chaps in the deal neither. You saved my life. If I had petered out here on that there table, I shouldn't have got any good out of the Pandora." "The Pandora?" exclaimed Charlie. "Exactly. That's the name I've given to the mine. It'll look good on the engraved certificates when the company is formed. The Pandora Copper Mining Company. Gideon Prawl, president. Maybe you'd like to be secretary, young man?" And he looked keenly at Jack Howard. "I should rather enjoy the sensation of being secretary to a successful enterprise of that kind." "Would you? Well, perhaps you shall, for I have taken a liking to you. That reminds me, you haven't either of you told me your names." "Mine is Jack Howard, and this is my friend and chum, Charlie Fox. His father owns this store, and is a doctor who was going to hold the inquest on you when he got back to town." "I'm afraid he'll be disappointed," chuckled Gideon Prawl, taking a long drink at the milk jug. "He'll be rather pleased than otherwise." "Is that a fact?" said the stranger from the West. "I always thought doctors enjoyed cutting folks up so as to get to their innards." "There are exceptions," replied Charlie, grinning at Jack. "What's the name of this town?" "Sackville." "Suppose you give me a piece of paper so as I can put that down along with your names. I want to do what's right by you young gents." Charlie got him a sheet of notepaper and a pencil. Prawl set to work to jot down what he wanted to preserve for future reference, but it was easy to see that he was more used to handling a shovel or a pick or something of that sort than a pen or pencil, though he seemed to be a fairly well-educated man, for his language was uncommonly good for a man of his appearance. "If you're only going west now instead of east, I should be tempted to go along with you," said Jack, with a new-born enthusiasm for the great Northwest. "Would you now?" replied Prawl, laying down his pencil and regarding Jack attentively. "Yes. I came out west for my health, and I have made myself a new man in a year. My people who live in New York look for me to return soon, but I'd rather rough it a while longer, though not at farming, which is the way I've been putting in my time since I came out here. I always had a liking for mining. I should fancy nothing better than getting an interest in a mine and putting in some big licks, if they would pan me out a fortune. Such things come to some people. Why not me?" "That's right, young man. I calculate you're the man for my money. I'm going to give you an interest in my mine." "I'm going to work for my share," said Jack earnestly. "Oh, there'll be plenty of work for you, I dare say, by and by, when the company's formed. And how about my chum here? He shall have an interest, too." "By Shinger," interrupted Meyer Dinkelspiel from the background, where he had been an interested listener and observer of the proceedings. "Where don't I come in those deals? If Yak and Charlie pulled you together with their battery, I put something better as that in your summy, Yak." "Ho, ho, ho!" roared the man from the west as he looked at the full moon countenance of the German boy. "Ho, ho, ho, yourself!" snorted Meyer indignantly. "I don't see nothing's funny in that. What is the matter with you, anyway?" "Would you like to rough it out in the mines, Meyer?" asked Jack with a wink at his chum. "If there was plenty of moneys in that, I'd rough it just as well as the next fellow, I bet you." "Why, they wouldn't do a thing to you out there," grinned Charlie. "Is that so?" retorted Meyer incredulously. "Don't you think that I took care of myself just as well as you or Yak?" "Suppose you ran against a bad man with a gun, what would you do?" asked Jack with a wink at Prawl. "What would I have done? I told you better after I found me one off those kind of snoozers." "I'm thinking you acted as sassy as you do to us, he'd fill you full of lead." "Is that so? He would, I don't think." "Well," laughed Prawl, "I guess I'll take you in with us. That is, if you'll agree to go out to the mine and make yourself useful." "I done that pretty quick, I bet you," said Meyer eagerly. "I'm that sick of these places that I shumped the land so soon as now you spoke the word." "Why, I thought you wanted to become a doctor, Meyer," grinned Jack. "Well, you know what that done, ain't it?" "My father wouldn't want to lose so valuable an assistant as you, Meyer," said Charlie. "If I was you, I would forget it," retorted the German boy a bit crustily, for he could see that the doctor's son was chaffing him. "I tell you what," said Jack enthusiastically, "why couldn't we go out to this place in Montana and take a look at the mine? This is your vacation, Charlie. You have more than 4 weeks yet ahead of you before you have to be in Omaha. We can let Mr. Prawl have the money to complete the purchase of the ground, so there won't be any hitch about that. Then we could pay his way on to Chicago after that, and I will go with him to see if the mining promoter he picks out doesn't do him up." "Gee!" exclaimed Charlie, alive at once to the proposal. "It'll be just the thing. If I represent the matter right to my father, he won't object. What do you say to that, Mr. Prawl? Will you go back with Charlie, myself, and this chicken? Don't forget that, if you please," piped Meyer. "And Meyer Dinkelspiel," continued Jack. "We'll put up the $200 and all expenses, and afterward I'll see you through to Chicago." "You don't mean it, young gentleman?" said Gideon Prawl, interested in the proposal. "Certainly we mean it," replied Jack. "And it's a bargain. I look on you now as my partners in this enterprise. Now I'll show you the paper by which I hold claim to the mine." Whereupon Prawl took out an old red pocketbook, extracted a not over-clean bit of paper, which he unfolded and spread out on the slab which had lately been his bed. "There's my option on the ground," he said complacently. "The mine is situated at the head of Beaver Creek, 3 miles southeast of Rocky Gulch mining camp, and a mile eastward of the trail. The creek runs into the north branch of the Cheyenne River, which flows past Trinity, a railroad town, so that the copper can be easily shipped by rail east. Here's a map with all the points named, which I drew up to show its location in the state. Young gentlemen, it was a lucky day for you that you came to know Gideon Prawl. And it was a lucky thing for you, Mr. Prawl, that I thought of applying the galvanic battery to your body," replied Jack Howard with a significant smile. "Well, you shan't never regret it," answered the prospector heartily. At that moment the clock in the surgery struck midnight. Hardly had the last stroke died away when Meyer Dinkelspiel suddenly started to his feet, and pointing toward the window, exclaimed excitedly, "My Shinger, look once by that window! Quick, somebody was looking in!" End of chapter 3.